Hey guys, so I wanted to do a short video today. I wanted to do a video about why we should be understanding and patient with people who are biracial and multiracial when they identify themselves as a monoracial person. So, part of the reason why I would say that we should be patient and we should be understanding of people who identify as monoracial um, and is because when you come at a person and you try to tell them why they should identify as multiracial, you shouldn't make it about yourself, or you shouldn't try to make it about yourself, and you shouldn't try to strive or try to achieve a situation where you want it to be so self centered on why you think they should identify as a multiracial person, because you have to try to see it from their angle, and you have to try to understand why they are doing it, why they are identifying as monoracial. And chances are it's not to be mean, it's not to be malicious or anything like that. Chances are it's because that's how they were raised to identify, and that's the culture that we live in, basically. First, not for all people, because it's not as prevalent as people would think, but there are people who still raise their multiracial children and who are multiracial themselves, and they identify as one race, and so they teach their kids that come from them, which would be multiracial if they're coming from you too, that they're also one race. And so that's partially the reason why people do that. But I think that I think that we should be understanding because of that reason. And also, whenever people like talk to multiracial or biracial people about what they identify as, you also have to keep in mind, you also have to keep into consideration that it's not necessarily that they're doing it to be malicious. And it's not about you either. But whenever you're trying to talk to somebody about their identity, and to a lot of people today, like racial identity is a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal. I think mindset and culture is more important than like race. But and race is kind of important if you want to achieve a certain look, or to make it easier to to know, I guess. I don't really know. But you have to understand that you have to be gentle when you're talking to somebody about something as precious to them and as serious as their identity. And you don't want to come off as you are suspecting them of doing something wrong, or you're thinking that they're doing something malicious to you when they're not. And if you constantly make it that you're suspecting, or you're suspectful of them, then you're always going to run into a brick wall, you know? And like, for example, there was a conversation that happened not too long ago about should biracial people identify as multiracial or black, specifically multiracial people who are mixed with an African, who have African or black ancestry. And the conversation was it was centered around the monoracial group that the biracial person was identifying as. And instead, in my opinion, instead of focusing on your group and trying to make it as this, like, oh, we're standing up for something and all this stuff, in that situation, because it's just a one-on-one conversation. It's you again talking to another human being, and like another person. So it's a little bit more interpersonal than it would if you were just talking to a large group of people. Like, it doesn't have to be as, intense. It doesn't have to be that way. You could just ask the person instead of, assuming and instead of guessing when that person is there. You could just, and instead of just like making up all of these assumptions and making up all of these scenarios as to why this person is doing this, when the individual, the source is there, you could just ask them, why do they do that? And chances are they'll tell you, well, this is how I was raised to be, this is how I was raised to think. And instead of attacking the person for, you know, identifying as a monoracial person, address, try to patiently and, in a nice way, instead of being mean about it, try to explain to them the benefits and why it'll be good for them to identify as multiracial. I guess that's one way of doing it, instead of making it about yourself and instead of making it a us versus them situation again, when it isn't that at all. It's not, it's more gray, no pun intended, but it's more gray than it is black and white, or clear cut, basically. Because if you have a person that's been taught this by even the people that's from your monoracial side or from your group, I don't want to say side or whatever, but that's from your group, then that's also something, you know, to be that's also that should give you more reason to be more graceful and to be more nice about it, if you know that this is just a culture and there's no reason to be hateful. And also, whenever you assume the worst on people and you overreact and you over dramatize everything, people are going to overreact to you, and people are going to make you out like, people are going to treat you the way that you treat them, you know, because that's the only type of dialogue, that's the only type of interactions those people have with you, is you assuming the worst, guessing the worst, and believing and having limiting beliefs and thinking like the worst about another person or about another group. And so, that's going to be how you move through the world. That's going to be how you treat other people. So those people then, reasonably, as human nature, and this is just my opinion, in my opinion, they're going to assume that you are jealous. They're going to assume that you are envious, that you have an issue with them, that you are racist, even if every time you talk about, multiracial people, regardless of what they're mixed with, you always line it, like the silver lining around it, or the gold lining around it, is that this person is negative, first, like, basically, or this person is up to no good. And so that that is why I believe personally why some people would say that monoracial people are jealous, because monoracial people say that multiracial people and biracial people have a are think that they're better than everybody else, because that's kind of like one extreme to the other, you know, because you're not taking into account all of the other, like, you don't know what's going on with the person, you don't know what that person is thinking. And so we're going to get aggression when you're being aggressive to people, or you're going to get an emotional response or not a response at all when you are assuming the worst, because it makes you have like an emotional tornado inside of you, and you don't really know what to do with that. So you just decide, so sometimes you just want to just let it go and leave it alone, because I don't know where this person is coming from. I don't know what this person's intent, but all I know is that they're saying a lot of things that at the end of the day that makes me seem malicious when I'm not, you know? And it's unreasonable for them to do that in the first place, because I haven't given them anything to do that. like me as a person, me as an individual, one on one talking, because because when you jump and make it an us versus them, then that's when people back off and they just don't want to have anything to do with you. And they don't want to have to talk with you because it's like, okay, this is about something else, or this isn't about the conversation, or this isn't about the subject that's in place now. And so people back off, and so they'll just leave you alone and they won't even deal with you. And like I said, if you assume the worst about everybody else, people are going to assume the worst about you, because people who assume the worst or always m- make everybody out to be malicious. If you're a person and you think everybody being is being negative towards you, what, like, for me, I would suspect that that person that thinks that way is preparing themselves up for defense against people that that they suspect the worst of anyway. So of course, I am going to suspect the worst, because you're preparing yourself basically for whatever you've convinced yourself of. And so that's what I wanted to say. That's all I wanted to add. And when it comes to multiracial people, I think that it's important for us to be kind and to be patient. And it's not that intense, it's not that serious. It's really not that deep, in my opinion. And when I say it's not that deep, like, of course it's important, to identify, because it's important for economic, for societal reasons, right? But if we're trying to be mature about it, race is just race. It doesn't identify you. It doesn't determine how, well, it does help, identify you, but it doesn't determine how you are. It doesn't determine what you are and how you act and what you do. It doesn't determine anything. Like, it doesn't have to, basically. And so that's why I say it's not that deep. It's just a tool for society, and that can be either used for bad or good. And some people don't think that it should be a tool used at all, because in my opinion, we all should be called Americans. You know, we all should be American at the end of the day. So that's just how I feel about it. But that's all I wanted to say. Okay, thank you. This is Brea Soren Fonte.